It was a night that no one in the Aken family would ever forget. The wedding had been nothing short of magical, with music, dancing, and laughter that echoed through the village of Ibera. Everyone had celebrated the union of Eo, the younger son of the Aken family, and his bride, Eniola, a woman known for her beauty and intelligence. The Aken family was wealthy and powerful, their fortune passed down from generation to generation. But their wealth came with a dark secret, one that Eniola was about to discover. After every wedding, the family gathered to play a game that had been passed down for generations. It all began when Eo's great-grandfather had found a mysterious box during a sailing trip many years ago. The small wooden box, covered in strange carvings, had a power that brought the family incredible wealth, but it came with a price. The game was always played after midnight on the night of a wedding. The rules were simple: the newlywed would draw a card from the box, and whatever the card said, they had to do. But the game was not as innocent as it seemed. Each card carried a task, and sometimes, the tasks were dangerous. Over the years, the family had learned to obey the rules of the box, for those who didn't were met with terrible misfortune. That night, the Aken family gathered in the grand living room, the flickering light of candles casting long shadows on the walls. The room was silent, filled with a sense of dread that even the sound of the wind outside couldn't drown out. In the center of the room sat the small wooden box, as old and mysterious as ever. Eniola stood beside Eo, her heart racing. She had heard whispers of this family tradition but didn't know what to expect. She glanced at her husband, who gave her a comforting smile, though she could see the worry in his eyes. He didn't want to play the game, but he knew they had no choice. The rules of the box were unbreakable. Bode, Eo's father, stepped forward. He was a tall, stern man, his face hardened by years of keeping the family's secrets. He looked at Eniola and nodded. "It's time," he said, his voice low and steady. "You must draw a card." With trembling hands, Eniola reached for the box. The air seemed to grow colder as her fingers touched the smooth wood. She hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of the eyes watching her, before finally opening the lid. Inside, a single card lay waiting. Slowly, she picked it up and turned it over. Her breath caught in her throat as she read the words written on the card: hide and seek. For a moment, no one moved. The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, and Eniola's heart pounded in her chest. She had heard of this game before. It was no ordinary hide and seek. In this version of the game, the entire family would hunt her down, and if they found her before dawn, the game would end. But if they didn't, the consequences would be deadly. Eo stepped forward, his face pale. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "We can't do this." "We must," Bode said firmly. "It is the rule of the box. If we don't play, we will all pay the price." Eniola looked at her husband, fear rising in her chest. "What happens if I win?" Bode's face darkened. "If you win, we will all be spared. But if we fail to find you before dawn, the box will claim us, one by one." A chill ran down Eniola's spine. She had no choice. She had to hide. The game had already begun. "Run," Bode said, his voice cold and emotionless. "You have until dawn." Without another word, Eniola turned and ran. She didn't know the house well, but she knew she had to find a place to hide, somewhere the family wouldn't think to look. Her mind raced as she sprinted down the long hallway, her footsteps echoing off the walls. Every second counted. The house was enormous, with countless rooms, hidden passageways, and secret hiding places. Eniola's heart pounded in her chest as she frantically searched for a place to hide. She knew the family would start hunting her soon, and if they found her before 6 a.m., the game would be over. But if she could outsmart them, she might just survive. She ducked into a small room at the end of the hallway, her eyes scanning the shadows for a hiding place. There was a large wardrobe in the corner, its door slightly ajar. Without thinking, she slipped inside, pulling the doors closed behind her. The space was cramped and musty, but it would have to do. She held her breath, listening for the sounds of footsteps outside. Downstairs, the Akin family began their search. Ayo's brothers, Kanal and Femi, moved quickly, their faces set with grim determination. Funk, Ayo's mother, searched the house with a sharp eye, her heart heavy with the weight of the family's curse. Ayo, though, moved slower than the others. He couldn't bring himself to hunt his own wife, but he knew that if they didn't find her, the box would kill them all. As the hours ticked by, Eniola's fear grew. She could hear the family moving through the house, their voices getting closer and closer. She knew they were searching for her, and if they found her, it would be over. But Eniola wasn't going to give up easily. She was smart, and she knew how to stay hidden. She stayed perfectly still, her breath shallow, as the family searched the house from top to bottom. The minutes turned into hours, and still, they hadn't found her. But time was running out. Dawn was approaching, and the family was growing desperate. If they didn't find Eniola before 6 a.m., the box would take its revenge. Ayo's heart pounded as he searched the house, his mind filled with fear and regret. He didn't want to hurt Eniola, but he knew the rules of the game. If they didn't find her, the box would kill them all. He couldn't let that happen. As the clock ticked closer to dawn, the tension in the house grew. The family was running out of time, and they knew it. Every room had been searched, every corner had been checked. But still, they hadn't found Eniola. And then, just as the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, Ayo heard a sound. It was faint, barely audible, but it was enough. His heart raced as he followed the sound to a small room at the end of the hallway. The door was slightly ajar, and inside, he saw the wardrobe. His hands shook as he reached for the handle. He knew what he had to do.